Well, choosing to forgive may be one of the hardest things we ever have to do in our lives. Wouldn't you agree? Why should we forgive? What happens when we forgive? And how do I even begin the process of forgiveness? These are great questions that I know you'll want answers for. And well, our panel of experts today are going to help us with those tough questions. That's coming up next on See, Hear, Love. Well, welcome to See, Hear, Love. I'm your host, Melinda, and I'm so glad that you joined us today online, on YouTube, on radio, podcasts, and on television. I'm so glad that you, our live audience, are here. Give yourselves a hand. I love the energy. Cat clapping, I'm clapping. And I'm so glad that you're joining us for a really light and easy topic, forgiveness. So get ready. We've got a great panel here, experts and those that have had to work through forgiving others, because the title of this show is Why I Choose to Forgive. And so I'm so glad that you're here. So let's get started. Tara Muldoon, speaker, author, and a survivor of sexual violence. You launched the FU Project. Love that title.
Forgive you.
Forgive you. It did say FU here, Tara. But it's Forgive You
My
Project.
grandma's watching. Forgive you.
I'm sorry. The Forgive You Project in late 2010 is one step in your own struggle to forgive your perpetrator. Yes. You launched that. And the Forgive You Project addresses mental health and gang-identified youth in custody, giving a platform for assaulted victim stories.
Yes.
Welcome, and thank you for being here to share your courageous story with us. Thank you so much. Great. Stacey Campbell, President and CEO of Prison Fellowship Canada, PFC. You do the hard work and good work of reconciling and restoring ex-offenders, their families, and victims using faith-based approach through the teachings of Jesus. Wow. Okay. And you're also working on your PhD on forgiveness. We got a lot of expert stuff here, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Wonderful. Thank you, Stacey. Michelle Schwarz, Manager of Health Services in Public Health. And you're here because despite your education and professional knowledge and experience in addictions and alcohol abuse, you couldn't forgive for a long time the man who chose to drive drunk and who killed your father. So thank you. We are going to learn a lot. Thank you for your presence here to share a very difficult journey and story, but I know that you will bring hope and freedom to those that are listening and watching. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here as well. Thanks. Cheryl Nembhard, co-host, author, speaker, social justice advocate. But Cheryl, you grew up without your father. You were molested and abused by a trusted elder in your church. You've been involved in gangs and lived a life on the streets, and now you're helping at-risk youth turn their lives around and see the need for forgiveness and hope in their lives. So thank you for sharing courageously your story as well. Well, let's start off with some of the most frequently asked questions about forgiveness. I want to start with you, Stacey. Define forgiveness, because I think across culture, forgiveness is all kinds of things and definitions. But how would you define forgiveness today?
I think at its root, forgiveness really is God's invitation to be restored. That's probably the most succinct way that I would put it. Biblically, there are a lot of pieces to it. God talks about forgiveness of nations. He talks about the forgiveness of individuals, and probably today we're interested in forgiveness as it relates to individuals. So
that's good. Nice and succinct, because I think sometimes we make it a long, big thing, but you're just saying it's just this restoration.
It's an invitation.
The invitation.
Yeah, come, be restored.
Beautiful. Tara, one of the questions too, when you Google forgiveness, I mean, I was Googling it just to see what are people looking up in regards to forgiveness. One of the number one questions on Google, why should I forgive those that have hurt me? That just comes up over and over again. What would you say to that? Why should I forgive those that have hurt me, especially within your own story?
Absolutely. For me, unforgiveness and resentment and anger was showing up so much in my body that I just turned into a cycle of self-destruction and being angry all the time, and just not wanting that for myself anymore. I wanted better than that, and it really did not have anything to do with the offender at that point. It was me that was carrying it and me that had to let it go. So it really is, for me, living your best life is when you can find peace and forgiveness.
So it's really, why I should forgive those that have hurt me, really comes back to ourselves.
Always.
Sometimes we think it's about the other person, but really it's for myself as well.
Yeah.
It's good, thank you. Michelle, for 10 years, you struggled with forgiving the man who chose to drive drunk and who killed your father. What happened in that 10 years when you don't forgive? What happens to you?
When we don't forgive, it gives that foothold for the enemy for bitterness to take root in your heart. And bitterness colors your perspective, how you see the world. It affects your relationships. And forgiveness crushes bitterness.
Wow. And you were just like, I don't want to be a bitter person any longer. Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. You know, Cheryl, we've talked a bit, and you guys have all touched, Tara, Stacey, and Michelle, on this, but when we do forgive, for you, because there's a lot of people you had to forgive and have had to forgive in your own life. What has it done for you?
It set me free, but it allowed me to actually embody the verse that says, when Jesus told me that he came that I might have life, but have it even more abundantly. Forgiveness gives us the entrance to this abundant living. And living in unforgiveness and resentment and pain it's this partial existence, very zombie-like, very shell-like. And so forgiveness allows me to step into the fullness of the love of God, acceptance of myself, release, true joy, many, many things, yeah.
What I'm hearing in a theme here, and I'm going to go back to you, Stacey, just quickly, is restoration. Some people don't know what that word means. We use it in church, we just sort of throw it like, be restored, restoration. But what does that actually really mean when we're tying that into forgiveness?
I think it means being brought back to what was originally intended, what God originally intended.
What God originally intended. And that was a life that was not one where we were hiding
That's
or angry
right.
and bitter.
Yeah, or impaired, or our perspectives are impaired. Actually, everybody has done a great job here of explaining it. But yeah, it's getting back to God's original intention for our relationship with Him and our relationship with others.
You know, one of the things, just before we go into our break, is this sense of a lot of times people don't forgive because they say that person deserves it. He or she who has hurt me deserves all the anger, but that doesn't make sense. Actually, when I even say that, it makes no sense, because that person possibly has gone on with their life and has no idea that you're sitting in resentment and anger to them, and yet it sounds so much about it's just hurting yourself.
Yeah, unforgiveness for me was like this. I thought I was inflicting pain on the other person by unforgiving. Silly me. Unforgiveness is a prison that we set up when the prisoner is ourselves. And so, more times than not, the offender is living their lives. Living their lives, and we are the ones imprisoned and in this bondage, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I know there's lots more to talk about as we go into our stories. So when we come back, we'll be hearing these courageous stories from Tara, Stacey, Michelle, and Cheryl about how they chose to forgive the people that have violated and hurt them and their family. That's coming up.
Check out the See, Hear, Love podcast and get the backstory.
Good job!
Get the inside scoop on real issues and real answers on common challenges we all face in relationships and in life. Find See, Hear, Love on Apple Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Melinda, host and executive producer of See, Hear, Love, and I hope you are enjoying our conversation today. Well, you may not realize that See, Hear, Love is made possible by the support of viewers and listeners like you. So would you please consider becoming a monthly donor? Any gift goes a long way in helping us build a community of women and men who talk about real issues and struggles as we navigate our faith together. Well, please go to SeeHearLove.com now and click on the big purple donate button. Thanks so much. Start your week off with me in your inbox. Sign up for our weekly newsletter today for exclusive content of See, Hear, Love, blogs, behind-the-scenes footage, and access to giveaways you'll love. Sign up today and let's start our week together. Wow, so we're back with our panel to talk about why we choose to forgive. And I want to start off with Michelle, because here it is, why choose to forgive the drunk driver that killed my father.
I spoke earlier about bitterness, and I came to a point where I realized that things I said, things I did, I didn't like them. Sometimes the things I would say to my children, unrelated to this, just sometimes I would say and do things, and began to question what the motives were underneath of it. I asked myself the question, what's underneath of that? And as I began to dive into that bitterness, well, where did this bitterness come from? And as I walked this journey of wanting to have what I said earlier, a whole heart, forgiveness is a very large part of that. And forgiving people that have wronged us. In my case, the gentleman who was responsible for my father's death, he never said sorry. He denied, he lied, and I felt like I was letting him off easy by forgiving him. But as Cheryl said as well, it's that prison that you're in yourself, where you think that holding unforgiveness over somebody, if you forgive them, they're going to get off easy. And that's not true. It's not true, because God sees all. He knows all. And we have to trust him that he's good. He can handle that. And that's why I chose to forgive. I knew God had forgiven me for many things. And I just needed to also just extend forgiveness in order to have freedom.
Right. And in that, as you went through that journey and you realized you wanted the whole heart, you are now starting to work with women. And you're working with, I think, Stacey, right? Is there working in Prison Fellowship, or is it the other organization where you're working with women in the prisons?
I have been with Prison Fellowship as part of their Sycamore Tree Restorative Justice Program, which was very powerful for me, to work with women who were serving time for the same crime that took my father's life. And I had gone to build their empathy, victim empathy, telling them my story. But when I heard their stories, I heard so much remorse for what they had done. And that healed this little piece of my heart again. And that's how good God is, that as I chose to forgive, he also remembered. And he blessed me and he healed me. And that little piece, he let me see remorse in other women's lives.
Powerful, Michelle. Thank you. So that's so good. Thank you for that. The whole heart. Beautiful. Tara, why I choose to forgive the offender who sexually assaulted me.
So this was all through trial. This is a criminal case. And I had a solid group of people who were praying and fasting for him. Praying every Sunday, we were at the altar just praying for this man to plead guilty, to find Jesus, to find purpose in this case. And on the morning of he did plead guilty. And in my victim impact statement, I spoke about how I want to forgive him because this is part of my life's work, and I want there to be purpose. It was so important for me for there to be purpose. And when he responded through his letter at court, he said that he found Jesus in this process. Wow. And that was a bit of it was a bit of a plot twist for me, because it's what we prayed for, and it's for some reason I doubted how big our God is. And so it's been powerful I don't have contact with him, but it has been powerful to see what God can make of a storm that I didn't think had any light in all. And I choose now to forgive him, because he also deserves to have his moment with God where God forgives him and he gets to move on. And hasn't been easy. I don't ever want to come off and say that this is an easy process, but he also deserves to be able to move on and do good in the world. And I have to remember that.
Wow, and because of that, then you also then started in 2010, the Forgive You Project.
Yeah, so FU now works with sex offenders and offenders in custody. And so just very similar to, as you were saying, I work with sex offenders, and I want to be the face of a victim. I want them to see what talking to a victim can look like. And it's not this idea of, when we work with men in custody, sometimes they have a lot of anger towards the victim, and for pressing charges, or they've no accountability in a lot of cases. And I wanted them to see how powerful a victim can be, and that you can learn from the face of a victim.
Beautiful. Well done. So proud of you. Good work. Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank you.
Cheryl, why choose to forgive the abuser who I trusted and who took advantage of me?
Very quickly, because I was spiraling. And I love what my sister said here. There's an equation I give at risk youth all the time. Hurt left unchecked, unresolved, undealt with, it morphs into anger. And anger left unresolved turns into this heavy root of bitterness that just forms this stronghold in your life. And everything is seen through that lens of bitterness. I wanted to be free. I realized that in order to to heal, to pursue the things that had been in my heart, to find myself, I had to forgive. And now I realize one of the biggest, this is a big one for me. Forgiveness is a form of self-love. I have to love this is not even about you anymore. I love myself enough and who I'm becoming that I want to be free. I want to soar. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I want to get unstuck.
Yeah.
And I choose myself.
That's beautiful. Wow, thank you, Cheryl. You know, for me, I think, you know, I had to kind of, there was moments in my life where there were some difficult things, but I think, and you've heard the story, you know, through the show, and I've shared this about just forgiving what I would say the one who left and abandoned me when you do go through a divorce. And there was something about being abandoned that you felt like you're not good enough, or that why didn't I work harder in the marriage? Why didn't this marriage work when it was supposed to be a lifetime commitment? And you have to go through the forgiveness, the sense of, you know, forgiving him for the decision, and then wrestling through all the things that you look back and say, oh, I could have been better. I should have done this. I should have. And really working through for years that process of forgiveness, and realizing that when I was trying to withhold forgiveness and being angry, it didn't matter to him, it was all me, and realizing the person I was becoming because of that, insecure, hidden, angry, bitter, not wholehearted, and sensing that in myself, and friends and close people saying, you're not Melinda.
Yeah.
There's something over you and in you that is causing you not to live this life of joy and freedom. And so it's difficult, but I'm so glad that I worked through the hard process, good Christian therapy, a great doctor, great community church, prayer, all of that, to finally get to that place and feeling really released in freedom to say, I have forgiven.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
That's everything you said just hit me so hard, Melinda, because the pain changes us. It changes us. And we could try to pack life and stuff and ignore, but it shows up, like you said, in other ways. And it really does affect all of who we are and how we see the world,
Stacey, you're listening to this, and you know, in the work that you're doing, so much about like ex-offenders and victims and families, and working on restoration with, you know, with them. What are your thoughts as you hear this, as we talk about why we are choosing to forgive in these very, very difficult places?
Yeah, and of course we work with offenders as well, and in the prisons throughout Canada. And pain does, Cheryl, that's right. Pain does change us. It actually distorts us.
Yeah.
And that is a key word that I certainly have witnessed, that and our focus comes off of the one where we should have our focus. Our focus comes off of God and on to the perpetrator. And it becomes the last thing we think about when we go to bed, and the first thing we think about when we get up, and pulls us away from who we were really created to be. Not an easy thing, though. Not an easy thing, and these are difficult stories.
Stacey, as you're saying, we've put, you know, a lot of us put our anger and hurt on the person, and you're saying actually sort of like shift, like a pivot to actually let's look to God and come up and listen to His truths of who we are, and look for that kind of freedom. Michelle, for you, I know with your story, you know, for the 10 years, I mean, I guess it's, in that case, I could see how angry you could be. I mean, it was so innocent. Your dad was coming out of, did you say, a Promise Keepers men's meeting?
It felt very unjust.
Yes.
And it was very unjust. And I think I was looking for justice in the wrong places, because I thought that when we went to court that I would find justice.
Right.
But we didn't. I didn't. And that's because he pled not guilty, and he had a defense, and he ultimately was found guilty. But this is one thing that I want to say about forgiveness, is when you process your pain with God. He knows all of it. He knows everything. And if you ask him, and I did, I asked him to give me a different perspective of this man, because then I was able to see a man who was afraid and acting on basic human principle that he had to defend himself and save himself. And then that made it easier to forgive him.
Powerful. It sounds to me that it's about like a perspective change, this pivot from offender, perpetrator, abuser, assaulter, drunk driver to God. Let Him take it. Let Him work in in you, the freedom, creating a whole heart, forgiving, the person who hurt you and loving yourself. All about God, all about relationship with Jesus. Well, thank you for your thoughts. We're going to come back. So thank you so much for your honesty and your bravery and your courage in sharing. Really, my heroes, really coming in here. Actually, let's just clap for them. I feel like we need to just clap. I got to use the audience. Love that. So thank you. Well, now let's go to co-host Joanna, Brooke, and Steve as they share a song and story from Ephesians 4:32 in the Bible, all about forgiveness.
Thanks, Mel. I mean, this is such a huge conversation, forgiveness. We all have been forgiven. We all need to forgive. But what does that even look like? How do we even start doing that? Yeah. And often the way of Jesus in so many things is just so opposite of what the world says we should do. Right. And so we have to look to what Christ has done, which is why we want to sing about it, why we want to talk about it in the Word today. So what song do we have?
Yeah, the song that we chose today was You Are My King, Amazing Love. It's an older song. I remember I used to sing this as a teenager, and I love the first line in the song that says, I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. Just that reminder that like what Christ did for us on the cross that day brought us forgiveness. Like he forgave our sins so that we could live in freedom. And so, I want to sing that for you.
I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do. I honor you.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about forgiveness starts with God. That's the great thing, right? It doesn't actually start with us.
Yeah.
I mean, all these stories of forgiveness, it's not out of our own strength, out of our own power. It's look what God has done for us first.
Yeah.
How can we honor God? Actually, when we choose to forgive those who have hurt us, it goes against our natural instinct. It goes against our flesh, right? Our flesh wants to like take and get revenge, but just like Christ forgave us, like we need to extend that same forgiveness.
Yeah, Ephesians 4, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you.
Yeah. And I think that there's that reciprocal thing of like, just as Christ forgave us, gave us freedom, like when we start to forgive others, we get freedom from those situations too. Like it's that whole cycle, I think. Letting go of that situation through forgiveness can help us start to be free.
That's right, amen.
So it's not easy,
Right.
but as we ask God for help, we can do this. So we're going to turn it back to you, Mal.
Thanks, Joanna, Brooke, and Steve. A beautiful reminder of forgiveness for us from the good word. Well, we have a little bit of time left, and I want to end with practical takeaways on forgiveness. So, Stacey, I know people are listening, watching, going, but how do I forgive? What is the first step I can take toward forgiveness and forgiving the one that has hurt me?
Sure. So I would say two things. First of all, I would say perhaps there's somebody who is listening who needs to be forgiven. I would say start with confession, with telling the truth, and start with repentance. Start with changed behavior, and then ask, and then move toward forgiveness. And if you are somebody who has to forgive someone else, we need to remember that forgiveness originates and began with what Christ did on the cross. And so begin with God, and begin with asking God, begin with coming to God, telling God, I struggle. I'm struggling to forgive. Pour it out, the truth, before God, and process it there with Him. Put your attention there.
That's good, and I love that it's a very personal thing. I think sometimes people feel that God is distant, He's disconnected with my actual, real life here for many people on the journey. But you're saying go to Him, and He will direct you to someone or community, or He actually will speak and say, this is the next step. Go to God. I love that, Stacey. Thank you. Example of Jesus, Cheryl. I'm always in this show, always back to Jesus.
Yeah.
The example of forgiveness within scriptures and within Jesus.
Yeah, Isaiah 53:7 in the NLT says he was oppressed and treated harshly. Yet he never said a word. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep is silent before the shearers, he did not open his mouth. And there's so many questions we could pull from that. Have we ever been treated harshly? Have you ever felt betrayed and hurt and let go? And it's so interesting to see how Christ used forgiveness as part of his ministry. I was always baffled when he was going to heal someone. There was many times that he would say, your sins be forgiven, as part of this healing. And what I took from that is, oh, I get it. Forgiveness is part of the healing process. Powerful, right? And so even in that act, he shows us that the two are part of this sort of beautiful journey of recovery.
Beautiful picture. Thank you, Cheryl. Tara, encouragement to someone who is struggling today with unforgiveness and wants to take that first step to forgiveness.
That was on my heart a lot coming here today. From one professional avoider to another who might be listening, I really encourage for women watching in particular to not walk around with the heaviness on your heart. It can change. I'm living proof, and I feel like you are worth the forgiveness journey to embark on it. Absolutely.
Good. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Michelle, one last encouragement to someone who is struggling with unforgiveness.
I just want to build on what Tara said about expectations, because let God manage them. Have no expectations and let God manage, and He will show up with surprising blessing and redemption. And that's what I learned in my journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Audience, let's just give them a hand. Cheryl, Michelle, Stacey, Tara. You guys are wonderful. I think what I'm so proud about the show, why I love that you're here, is that it takes courage to share a story so that others will be healed and find freedom. And I think that's the whole point of this, is to help people find freedom in places where they're stuck, freedom in places that have held them and bound them and are destroying them. And when I go around, I speak to women across Canada, and I see the pain and the oppression of women. It's like, rise up, rise up. No longer should you be bound. But let's live out a whole heart and wholehearted life, focused on God, with no expectation, but that you will be free, right? And that forgiveness is coming in loving and accepting yourself. So thank you so much. And to you, our audience, thank you too for being with us and for clapping and just tracking with us. It means a lot that you share in this story with us. And to our viewers and listeners, if you're struggling with unforgiveness, we want you to choose that today will be the day that you choose to take the first step toward forgiving the one or ones that have hurt you. It's time to choose healing and freedom today. So for further resources on forgiveness and blogs from our guests or information to help you on your journey, go to seehearlove.com. And as you take this journey of hope and wholeheartedness, always know that you're seen, heard, and deeply loved by God. Bye-bye. Deeks Insurance is a proud sponsor of the See Hear Love Studio.